So what I want to talk about today is palettes. So if you buy a new paint box, like a French easel or just a wooden paint box, it'll come with a wooden palette. That palette is not finished, and you need to shellac it. You need to use shellac because shellac is not soluble with paint thinner. If you use a finish that's soluble with paint thinner, then the first time you clean your paint off your palette, it would clean the finish off your palette too. So your palette will just be like plain old wood, and the paint will soak into it, and you'll have something like this right away that you can't get rid of. So before you use a wooden palette, it needs to be shellacked. I haven't been using my wooden palette much anymore because I switched to water-based oils, and I don't know, it just didn't work as well. I couldn't get my palette as clean, my wooden palette as clean as when I was using really oil paints. So this is a palette I really like. This is a Yellow, and I'll put all this information in the video at the end. What's nice is it has a lid. So I used it mostly for landscape painting in Italy. And I was doing a lot of paintings where I started with acrylics, so I would use the lid as my palette for my acrylics, and then I would switch to oils, and I would use this part for my oils. And the great thing is you can clamp this lid on, and you can put the whole thing in the freezer. I prefer the gray to the white, and I'm not sure you can get the gray anymore, but I prefer the gray to the white because when you're painting outside, white is just too reflective. And if you're the kind of person that can't be counted on to clean their palette every time, then I recommend using paper palettes because, especially a wooden palette, if you don't clean it off before it dries, it's ruined. And the thing I like about the gray palettes is, again, it's not so reflective when you're painting outside. If I was going to use one of these, I would tape it to my wooden palette and then, just throw. Especially with acrylics, there's all that talk about microplastics. So when you're washing an acrylic palette off in the sink, you're putting microplastics in the water. So there's not a great solution, but it seems better to throw it away to me than to wash it down the drain. So let's see if I can do this without dropping my camera. I have here, I usually have my paint kind of out in the same order that I'm going to put it on my palette. That way I can just find it quicker. Because when I'm painting, I really don't like interruptions, and kind of searching for paint is sort of an interruption. So this palette is a piece of glass that is attached to a piece of foam core. I only use it indoors. I don't carry it around with me. And so I don't care that it's white, that's fine. Some people might want gray. You might, whatever surface you're working on, if you always work on red, starting a red painting, you might want to be able to change it out. I mean, I guess that would be a really great thing. You could change out the color that's behind your palette. But I do have mine taped down with duct tape, sort of. Okay, and I put my paint over here on this left-hand edge and the edge furthest away from me. And that's so when I'm painting, I'm not reaching, I'm not dragging my hand over my paint or my sleeve. So my paint is all the furthest away from me, and I'm pretty neat and organized. I had a teacher, Richard Getz, and he really wouldn't help you if you didn't have your paint out in his order. And so I've been doing this since I was 15, 16. But I really like it because I never have to wonder where is the blue. It's like one less thing I have to think about. My brush just knows where to go because I've been painting there for so long. So like I said, I'm using the water-based oils, and I really like them. It's not a problem for me. The only thing I don't like about them is that they're just more slow drying. So I came up with this idea, which is my idea, and I don't know if it's a good one, but I've been mixing the Winsor Newton Griffin Alkyd paints with my artisan paints. And the Alkyd paints dry really quick. And so I've been using just the white. I tried just using straight Griffin Alkyd white, but that made my paint dry too fast. So now I'm mixing it half and half with this. And the way I do that is, yes, the way I do that is open this. And when it's cheaper to buy these bigger tubes of paint, if you paint all the time, you can save some money by buying bigger tubes of paint. Some colors, I would not buy a big tube of paint. In the water-based oils, but that's kind of like so much information. But just for instance, the cerulean blue in the Artisans dries really fast, and if you buy one of these big old tubes of it, you just get to this point, you could just be stomping on it with your foot and you can't get the paint out. So I don't buy the cerulean blue anymore in a big tube. So here I've got my Artisan white and my alkyd oil white. So people have different ideas about what they want in painting. Like, I like my paintings to be dry every day, so I have a whole new shot at it. Some people like to work in paintings that are kind of half wet. Some people like to work on paintings that stay wet the whole time. And there's different things you can do to your paint to make that happen for you. But I like mine dry every day. All right, and so when I'm done then, I just put this over here. And I use enough white in everything. I use white in every color. So just by adding that alkyd white, it makes my paints, it makes everything dry by the next day. Okay. All right, so like this is my palette I've been painting. So what I do, I come back, I was here yesterday, I come back and I just sort of make sure that that paint is still decent. The thing about paint is it dries on your palette. The paint underneath it sort of soaks the oil out of it. So you can't really leave your paint out days after days. So like this is kind of iffy. Okay, and what I do is this is like enough paint to start with for a day. I've got one thing I don't have any out is the cobalt blue. So what I do with my paint is I take it and I put it out in like toothpaste on a toothbrush. I don't just squeeze out a big blob of it. I like it to be like this in a line, because then what I can do with my paintbrush is I can pick color off the end of the paint, and instead of like dirtying up a whole thing of paint. So this is just on the verge of not enough paint. You want enough paint that you feel like you're not being cheap, but you also, you don't want to waste paint. It's really expensive. Okay, so I mentioned that I always put my paint out in the same order, and I'll put that order, I'll write it down so you can see it at the end. I use phthalo green, I use permanent green light, I'm using a turquoise because I'm doing so much water, but also it's good for other things. Cerulean blue, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow, probably light, let's see what it is. Cadmium yellow pale, actually. Cadmium orange. Oh, cadmium yellow pale. Yellow ochre. Sometimes I use, raw sienna. Cadmium orange, burnt sienna, cadmium red. And for your reds, you can see this is red, but look how orange it looks. So you need a pink. Otherwise, you can't make pink. You can't. Cadmiums are very warm in color, so you need a color that you can mix with white and make pink. And that is in the Winsor Newton Artisans, it's called Permanent Rose. And then the color I can't really live without, dioxazine purple. And then my white. And you can see I have about twice as much white out as the other colors. And I put it in 2 piles so I can kind of keep it clean. This is known as a prismatic palette because it has the primary and secondary colors. I hardly use any of the earth colors or grays. I just have right now yellow ochre and burnt sienna. I mix my grays and I mix my earth colors with my primary colors. Sometimes, occasionally, nope, that's not you, I will add Payne's Gray, and then I put it right here, but because it's not something I use all the time, it's really funny. I find myself sticking my brush in it thinking it's the dioxazine purple, so I probably should put it somewhere over here where it's not going to get confused.